Well, we finally gotten a break in the mass amounts of Toronto Blue Jays news and everything coming out recently. So, why is no one talking about Bo Bichette? What's going to happen with him this season?
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. As always, I'm Braden Iwasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5 Iwasco, Carter First 2 for all Blue Jays information, feelings, thoughts throughout the season. Make sure you do head over to our Twitters, drop us a follow there. Much appreciated as well. If you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, make sure you head over to the YouTube page. We've made it the hub. Drop a subscription. It really does help us out. You guys have been killing it lately, but we still notice a lot of you guys aren't subscribed who are watching these videos, so make sure you do hit that subscribe button. You'll get videos, lives, podcasts, shorts, whatever there might be. As well, Discord link is down in the description if you guys want to talk Blue Jays with us anytime you want. Usually when there's big things that happen, we have a little discussion in the Discord channel about what's going on. It's been a weird off season so far. A lot of ups, a lot of downs with this Toronto Blue Jays team. The one part that I keep coming back to, and me and Carter have had conversations with, is what in the world is going on with Bo Bichette? Why is there no news around this guy? Why is there no talks of re-signing him in this offseason? We've heard a lot about Vlad, that they're trying to work something out, that, there are reports that the Blue Jays are now around the $450 million mark. Will it matter? I don't know. We'll have to wait. It's only a few weeks left before spring training and Vlad's apparent deadline. But nothing surrounding Bo Bichette, a player that a lot of people were very high on just a season and a half ago. Where is he now? Carter, I'm going to throw it to you. Take us through the timeline of events here this offseason that has led up to the point where, just no conversations are happening.
There have been a ton of reports and storylines regarding Bo Bichette this offseason, but I'm even going to take this back to the start of 2024 and maybe even a little bit before that. So when you think of the Toronto Blue Jays, you think of faces of the franchise. The number one is obviously Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That should be this organization's main focus. But you're looking at the next face of the franchise, the number two. For us, it's Bo Bichette. You could argue maybe it's Kevin Gausman. You could argue it's George Springer. But after last season, you're probably not arguing on terms of George Springer. In this case, obviously with the season that he had, we're talking about bad seasons. Bo Bichette last year did not have a good season. George Springer's was even worse. But these reports all kind of started, obviously, due to Bo Bichette not having a very good 2024. Bo Bichette plays like regular Bo Bichette that we've seen from 2020 and on. You're probably not seeing as many reports of Bo Bichette being traded at trade deadlines. And then there might be a little bit more talks about him possibly re-signing in Toronto. Right now, the main difference between Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette, seen a ton of this regarding Vladdy, not really anything regarding Bo Bichette. And this all kind of started from Bob Nightingale earlier this offseason, where he reported that Bo Bichette is as good as gone. That was, not in the offseason, that was in the middle of 2024. And then there was reports that even Bo Bichette's friends said that he had no real interest in signing in Toronto. When we see these reports that, like, friends, it's like hearsay. I'm not taking a lot into that. Like, your friends could say anything, obviously, and there could just be people making up reports that Bo Bichette's friends are saying he doesn't want to be in Toronto. There's a little bit of a narrative as well during the 2024 offseason. I think you were a little bit on this side as well, that Bo Bichette didn't really look like he was trying in Toronto, didn't really look like he was comfortable, not having, obviously, very good plate appearances, didn't really feel like he wanted to be there. So that is a perspective that some people had. I think that also goes into these rumors, into these trade talks, into the discussions that there hasn't really been any talks with Bo Bichette. But then in mid-July, obviously the Toronto Blue Jays, not a very good team in 2024. We're looking to sell some assets at the trade deadline. There was a report that came out saying Bo Bichette would not be surprised if he was traded. And people tried to spin that and say Bo Bichette wanted out. Well, I think it was just the team sucked. He knew that they were going to try to move on from some assets. He thought he might be one of those assets becoming on an expiring contract, especially when we haven't really seen any reports of that moving in positive directions regarding Bo Bichette. So that one did make a little bit of sense. But with Ross Atkins, what he has always said is that he wants to have a competitive team. in July at that 2024 deadline. He kind of knew the Toronto Blue Jays really don't have a shot at the playoffs, but it was a short-term sell. It wasn't going to be into 2025. And then you head into 2024, for example. But if we take this 2024 season out with Bo Bichette, this is an unbelievable player, phenomenal player, finished in the top 16 in AL MVP voting the last 3 seasons, 21, 2022, and 2023. This guy is unreal. Some people among the Toronto Blue Jays organization have said that this is one of the best pure hitters that they have ever seen. Before the 2024 season, this guy was a 299 lifetime hitter with an 826 career OPS. And throughout those 3 seasons, 2021, 2022, and 2023, this guy was averaging 185 hits, 89 RBIs, 25 home runs, 298 average, a 4.8 WAR. Just ridiculous numbers. Obviously, things did not go well in 2024, but there has been a lot of saga. Is Bo Bichette going to sign an extension in Toronto? Is he going to be traded? We've seen a lot of rumors going to the Dodgers. From everything that Ross Atkins has said, you can kind of nip it in the butt right now. Bo Bichette, he maybe does not sign in Toronto, as we have not seen a lot of contract extension talks, but he is not going to be traded this offseason. We will see Bo Bichette in 2025. And me and you, I know we've talked a lot about this on the podcast, a lot, even more about it off camera. Bo Bichette is going to have a career year. We're both on this fence. He is going to have a major bounce back. It's like when you're in a contract year, you see it a lot of athletes, whether it's the NHL and the MLB, you see it all across sports. This is their money-making year. They're going to put their balls to the wall. They're going to go as hard as they possibly can to make that major contract and make their bank generational wealth for these guys.
Yeah, Carter. I mean, we've had the conversations around Bo Bichette, and I know a lot of people online don't share necessarily the same view that me and you do, in the sense of talking about that huge bounce back player that we think Bo Bichette will be. To me, it just all goes back to the previous seasons. Justin Powers, our roommate, shout out to him. He brought up a question a long time ago to me and you. I think this was maybe start of the season last year that that really got us talking. I think it might carry on to the end of this podcast. That might be Justin Powers' question. And this is what it was. How can you tell when a player is just having an off year, or if they are bad, or if they're having one great year, or if they are a great player? What is the difference? How do you tell? And to me, you have to look at the entire career of that player. With Bo Bichette, if you take a look at his entire career and what he's done, leading the league in hits, leading, how many years now he's done that, 2 or 3, which is just insane numbers from a guy that going now into this season, people are okay with letting go. That makes no sense to me. I look at Bo Bichette like he's not, maybe he won't be that player again that might lead the league in hits, but I think he'll be a very, very solid piece to this team, and a piece you'll need to do well if this team wants to succeed moving into 2025. And Carter, I take a look back a few years ago. I know you mentioned this earlier, when everybody wanted Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette was their guy. They were saying, let Vlad walk. Bo's going to be the superstar of this team. We need Bo. You don't need Vlad. And now this past year, the script flipped. So at the end of the day, you've talked about 2 guys being the face of your franchise, these unbelievable players in Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Why are we having the discussion for a team that's supposed to be competing in playoffs? You cannot be having the discussion of, which one do we want to keep and which one do we want to let go? No, it should be, you should do everything in your power to keep these 2 amazing baseball players together. Carter, has there been a season where both Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette were both having great years yet? Maybe 2021, but outside of that, we haven't seen those 2 play at their peak baseball together since then. So if you're asking, this would be the year for me. Both guys going into contract years. Bo Bichette knows he has to make a mark this season after the pitiful season that was 2024. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. knowing he will get the absolute bag after this year if he has a good year. I think this is everything coming together for these 2 guys to both have a great season.
It's crazy how quickly the narrative can change in Toronto Blue Jays line. 2021 led the MLB, the MLB in hits. 2022 led the MLB in hits. not that long ago, this guy was an unbelievable baseball player. And yeah, the only argument yet, like you said, 2021, Bo Bichette obviously leading the AL in hits, and then Vlad, you don't have to talk too much about that season. Every Toronto Blue Jays fan should remember how good Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was in 2021. But yeah, you look at this narrative that Bo Bichette is just no longer a good baseball player. I'm not sure exactly how this happened. Like with George Springer, for example, this guy's 35 years old. He's down, very down year. I don't think it's as bad this upcoming season, but like you can kind of make sense of it in your head when you talk about George Springer. He is getting older. Like there has been regression as soon as he's joined the Toronto Blue Jays, has kind of gotten worse every single year. Bo Bichette is entering his prime. Bo Bichette is not old whatsoever. He had one bad season, injury plagued. Obviously, things did not go very well from the start. It's tough to kind of get back in that groove when you're suffering from injuries, you have lingering injuries, and you don't start the season very well, especially when the Toronto Blue Jays just aren't a very good baseball team either. Not a ton of incentive to have like your full mental capacity on the game of baseball. So I'm not sure how this narrative that Bo Bichette's not going to be a good baseball player has started, especially going into the contract year. There's just more incentive for Bo Bichette to be good. When you look at the team, the roster construction, the team that Ross Atkins has built, he clearly wants to make this team a competitive team in 2025. Will that happen? We're going to have to see. But this all stems from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. This all stems from Bo Bichette. Again, you make these additions. You get Anthony Santander, you get Max Scherzer, you get Jeff Hoffman. You get some of these guys that come in from outside the organization. But if you have bad years from Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, we say this all the time, it's not going to matter who you get. You could have got Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto. If you're two guys, they're two faces of the franchise, are not going to compete, and they're not going to have competitive bats. They're not going to be productive. They're not going to produce like superstars. You're not going to have a very successful team. So I'm not sure how we got to this point with Bo Bichette, but I know I'm all in on Bo Bichette. I know you're all in on Bo Bichette, and I am so ready for this guy to prove the doubters wrong in 2025.
Carter, I'm just going to put this out there right now. I've called now two different things that were going to happen this offseason. Anthony Santander, who I was on from whatever, and then actually, I'll say three things, because I called the week that Anthony Santander was going to sign, and I called the week that Max Scherzer was going to sign. So I am calling right now on this podcast, bounce back candidate of the year, Bo Bichette, right now. As somebody etch that in stone, timestamp this, whatever you want to do. Because at the end of this year, I will come back on this podcast and I will admit if I'm wrong, but I am putting it right now. Bo Bichette bounce back candidate of the year. Carter, let's take a quick break. Let's come right back. We got a lot more to get into on what is the possibility here surrounding Bo Bichette. We sort of did the whole overview look, but now let's really dive in. Will he re-sign? Will he play his contract out till the end of the season? Will there be a trade? What does it all depend on? Let's take a break and come back and talk about that. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You guys know how much I love FanDuel. I love talking about it because I like winning money, and FanDuel lets me definitely do that. Just won some the other day on the NHL. But Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it so much easier to get in on the action. With live game betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. I actually have already placed some bets for the Super Bowl next weekend, so I am pumped up, ready to go. Should be a great game. Should be a lot of fun. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. So being back, you've given everybody the overview. Me and you have sort of said our piece a little bit on how the sort of narrative flipped around Bo Bichette. Carter, now I think we got to talk about it. What has to happen for Bo Bichette to re-sign? What has to happen for Bo Bichette to be traded mid-season? And what has to happen for Bo Bichette to, at the end of the day, not re-sign with the Toronto Blue Jays post the 2025 season?
Well, I think the major thing that needs to happen for Bo Bichette, just honestly for his entire career, is that he needs to have a good season in 2025. When we talk about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. not signing that contract extension because he can test the market in 2025, probably make a lot more money. And then we always talk about not buying high on a lot of players. You don't want to buy high on these guys that are having career years. When you're Bo Bichette and you had the worst season of your career by far, why would you sign that contract extension now? You're not going to be making nearly as much money as you probably are worth. You have a good 2025. That contract is going to skyrocket right away. So I'm not taking it too much into concern with Bo Bichette not re-signing right now, because again, from his team, his front, it doesn't really make a lot of sense on his behalf, whether he does want to sign in Toronto or whether he doesn't want to. It doesn't make sense to have a contract extension right now. I think a lot of this will play on the 2025 season as well, depending on how competitive the Toronto Blue Jays are. When you're a guy like Bo Bichette in your prime, even this can be attributed to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as well. If this team is not very good again in 2025, do you want to commit your prime years to going into a rebuild? I probably wouldn't if I'm Bo Bichette. So it depends on how good this baseball team is. That's going to have a lot of influence on whether Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. do sign contract extensions, because they don't want to waste their years of their prime, especially when they could be going again. A team like the Los Angeles Dodgers that we see have been linked to Bo Bichette, and obviously play among superstars like Shohei Ohtani. We can go through the list. You guys obviously know how good the Los Angeles Dodgers are right now.
Yeah, man. I don't know. There's so many options here and so many different things that can happen. And a lot of pieces play into this Bo Bichette extension. First of all, you're 100% right. A great season from him. Definitely, from his point of view, really helps what he's going to make. Does that help the Blue Jays necessarily re-sign him? I think so, because I don't necessarily know that the Blue Jays want to pull the trigger on Bo Bichette right now. But I think if he goes out and does what he does, has a great season, I think there's more incentive for the team to re-sign him. Talking about the trade, what would have to happen for Bo Bichette to be traded? Now, this would have to be a colossal failure on this organization standpoint. If Bo Bichette is traded mid-season, this team is probably not looking good. They're probably not making the playoffs, and the team is going to try to get whatever money they can out of Bo Bichette before then eventually, most likely heading into some sort of partial rebuild. And then at the end of the year, what would it take for Bo Bichette not to re-sign here in Toronto? And for me, this is the big one. For him not to re-sign in Toronto, a couple things would have to happen. I think Vlad doesn't re-sign, for one, in Toronto. Number two, he either doesn't have a good year and tries to just get as much money as possible. Three, has an amazing year and the Blue Jays don't want to pay him. So when you're looking at all of these different options, I think why we haven't been hearing as much on the Bo Bichette front in terms of a contract extension is because there are so many pieces to this puzzle that is a Bo Bichette contract. He probably won't want to play here without Vladdy, and that's what I mentioned before. And that's one of 10 things that we could bring up that all play a piece and a role in Bo Bichette's eventual decision to stay or not stay with the Toronto Blue Jays. So I'll be very curious moving forward. But to me, Carter, I put some thought into this. We were supposed to do this episode a few times and news kept breaking. And in the back of my head, I was sort of replaying, okay, how do I come at this episode of the podcast when I don't necessarily know how I feel about the whole contract situation? And I gave it a lot of thought. And this is what I came to, is that there's too many pieces of the puzzle for either side to make a valid decision on what a contract or if a contract should look like for Bo Bichette.
Yeah, they're kind of in this murky area right now where there's just, again, a lot of uncertainty still with Bo Bichette. A lot more certainty with the team right now. I think they will be competitive in 2025. When you're looking at Bo Bichette, you're looking at the contract extension talks. It's pretty much been a smokescreen. We haven't really seen a lot of proven reports come out, but one of the reports we did see that you kind of alluded to as well is Bo Bichette did come out, and I can't remember who this was reported by, but he said he wants to win championships with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He wants to play with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for life. So obviously you sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr., that's a whole lot more incentive to sign Bo Bichette. And like you said, the only way this guy is getting traded is if they're going, the season goes completely hectic. It goes completely out the window. This team does not win a lot of games. They have to sell at the trade deadline once again. I think at that point, the front office would have to evaluate, is there a good chance that they are going to extend Bo Bichette in the offseason? The answer is no. You got to do the same thing, unfortunately, that you did in 2024. Sell off your assets. You can still get a boatload of prospects, like maybe some MLB talent piece as well. But again, if you're trading at the trade deadline, you're probably focusing on prospects. And you only have that half a year left, so you wouldn't have gotten nearly as much as you would have. You would have traded Bo Bichette earlier on in his tenure. And that's going to be exactly what we do see if this team does not work out very well. It's going to be a bunch of people saying, why was Bo Bichette not traded this last offseason? Why didn't the Dodgers take him here? Why didn't they trade him over here? And it is going to be insufferable on social media when we are looking at that. But again, I don't think that is going to happen. I would put money on the Toronto Blue Jays being competitive, not selling at the trade deadline, maybe not being in a sole playoff spot at the trade deadline, but I think still being very competitive. So it's really up to Bo Bichette. This lies in Bo Bichette's hands to what his fate is going to look like. If he has a good season and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. does sign, so I guess a little bit does rely on the front office as well. Very good chance he does sign with the Toronto Blue Jays. It really is going to paint the picture in this upcoming season with how good Bo Bichette is and how good this Toronto Blue Jays are in 2025.
Well, and Carter, a whole nother piece that I didn't even add into the whole Bo Bichette puzzle is Anthony Santander. You just signed Anthony Santander for a multi-year deal, and now you think if you can get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. back and possibly Bo Bichette, maybe that's more incentive for Bo Bichette to stay, because then you have 3 amazing players locked up for many more years to come. You think that's a great core to be able to build around every season. So again, this front office has to look at, and you got Anthony Santander on an absolute steal of a deal. I will never die. I will die on that hill that is one of the best contracts in baseball right now, because, oh my goodness, it is an absolute. I just saw another video, Carter, about somebody was doing like a deep dive onto some of the best contracts in baseball. And when they went through the numbers, Anthony Santander was one of the best contracts in baseball, best value contracts in baseball. So, shout out Blue Jays and the organization as a whole of getting that contract done, and somehow it escaping the minds of every other team that are in contention for Anthony Santander. And how nobody offered this guy more, I have no idea. But at the end of the day, it all fits into Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the puzzle that is going to be the 2025 season. So I'm just ecstatic to see what happens. I'm sort of sitting on the edge of my seat because I know we have a franchise player in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and an all-star in Bo Bichette, who 2 guys might not re-sign next year. There's a lot up in the air in Toronto Blue Jays land, but at the very least, it really does get me excited for the season that could be 2025.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the theme of the podcast the last month, is the excitement, is getting ready for 2025. We had in December in 2024, honestly, the entirety of it regarding the Toronto Blue Jays was horrible. There's not a lot to get excited about in 2024 other than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in Toronto Blue Jays line in 2024. You looked at I guess Bowden Francis, you can throw in there too. He was pretty unbelievable at the end of the season. But when you're regarding like Alejandro, Kirk, George Springer, you can look at Kevin Gausman, you can look at Jordan Romano, obviously not being on the team anymore. You look at Erik Swanson. So much went wrong for the Toronto Blue Jays. I think a lot of the fan base is just ready for things to hopefully go right in 2025. We have a ton more that we do want to get into. I have some contracts that, like, if Bo Bichette does have a bounce back season, what the contracts could look like going into the 2025 offseason, what we expect from Bo Bichette in 2025. Do we expect that bounce back, and how significant of a bounce back do we expect from Bo Bichette? Will he return to that 2021 to 2023 form? Will it be somewhere in the middle of the 2024 and 2023 form? We're going to come at you guys with all of that coming up.
So, Carter, a lot more to get into. We want to go into sort of our predictions, first of all, of what Bo Bichette's year could look like. Second of all, what do we think is going to happen? Will he re-sign with the Blue Jays? Will he be traded? Will he move on to another organization? But, Carter, first of all, why don't you get into what a Bo Bichette contract could look like?
So the way I did this is I looked at some of the contracts amongst shortstops around the league. And just assuming Bo Bichette has a good season in 2025, because honestly, if Bo Bichette does not have a good season in 2025, the Toronto Blue Jays are probably not a very good team in 2025. And then I do expect them to part ways. Just obviously fresh starts. You see that does work a lot of the time in the MLB and just all around sports, whether it's NHL, NFL, NBA. You see that fresh starts can change a player's career. So looking at some of these contracts to model from for Bo Bichette, Trey Turner has an 11-year, $300 million contract, which is $27.3 million AAV. Carlos Correa, 6-year, $200 million, which is $33.3 AAV. Dansby Swanson's another one, 7 years, $177 million, $25.3 AAV. And then the Willie Adames one to the San Francisco Giants just happened this offseason. That might be the best one to base this off of. You have a 7-year, $182 million contract, $26 million AAV. So assuming that Bo Bichette can kind of return to form, assuming that he does have a good season once again, I looked at FanGraphs and their steamer projections for Bo Bichette, so I'll quickly go into that now. We'll say that he has relatively similar numbers to this. I'm expecting him to do a little bit better, but we'll roll with this for now. So looking at Bo Bichette, they expect him to have 19 home runs, 81 RBIs, strikeout rate of 19.2%, batting average of 278, on base of 324, slugging of 440, weighted runs created plus of 117, and a 3.7 WAR. Again, I expect that to be better for Bo Bichette. I expect him going into contract year that he's going to probably have a slightly higher average. I think the OPS is going to be a lot higher as well. But regarding Bo Bichette, assuming he has that type of year, you got to expect that it's going to be probably 6-7 years and around that $25 to $30 million AAV, kind of fitting in with all these other contracts that I just listed.
Yeah, Carter. Actually, when you were going over the numbers of the projected, I sort of in my head had numbers for Bo Bichette of what sort of I expected, and for me, the home run total was right around 21. That's sort of where I had Bo Bichette listed in my head for home run numbers. I have, when we go into the preseason and spring training and all that, we're going to have a 2025 season outlook. We'll do some hot takes, some predictions, everything like that. That episode is going to be a ton of fun. Maybe we'll get Dallin and Skylar on for that one and do a big roundtable with all the boys. As you guys will be seeing sort of them sporadically this season as well. So just throw that out there. But those numbers aren't completely off the mark. I think those are fair numbers to give them. I agree with you. I said I think I could see Bo Bichette probably hovering around a 4.2 WAR this season. That's sort of where I expected, which is higher than Fangraphs projected. But I'm going to have a little bit of my bias towards Bo Bichette is a little bit higher in most statistical categories. So I guess, Carter, I guess to wrap up, we have to talk about sort of what we honestly think is going to happen with Bo Bichette. So I'll get your prediction first, and I'll sort of cap things off here. But what do you expect? What do you expect from a season of Bo Bichette? What do you expect to happen? What's the outcome? Is he going to be a Toronto Blue Jay again, or do you see him possibly moving on or being traded?
I don't expect a trade possibility at all. I'm going to nip that in the butt immediately. I don't see that happening at the trade deadline. Again, I expect the Toronto Blue Jays to be competitive enough where they don't have to sell at the trade deadline. So Bo Bichette going to be on the team in 2025. When it comes to 2026, some people are thinking that it's either Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or Bo Bichette. Why not both? Why can we not have this narrative where you have two franchise cornerstones that are going to be massive contributors to your team for an extended period of time? Again, you got to hope that you can sign Bo Bichette for 6 to 7 years. The Vladimir Guerrero Jr. contracts have been anywhere between 10 years and 15 years for him. You have those two guys locked up for a very long time. That it gives you a minimum at least. And again, if the Toronto Blue Jays aren't a very good team, say in 2026, 2027, 2028, whatever it is, at least you have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., at least you have Bo Bichette. There is some there's some things you can enjoy, and you can enjoy with the Toronto Blue Jays if you have Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on your baseball team. But overall, I don't expect it necessarily to go right back to those 2021, 2022, and 2023 numbers, but I expect it to be a whole lot better than 2024. Like I said, I expect it to be better than that 765 OPS. I think he can get close to 800. I think he surpasses 20 home runs. I think the RBI total is fairly similar. I think it is around 80, maybe 90. Again, this also depends where he hits in the batting order. I've seen this where he's hit number one with George Springer not being one, but we expect George Springer obviously to be number one. From the projected one that I've seen, the lineup right now is George Springer 1, Vladdy 2, Santander 3, and Bo Bichette 4. So you got to assume if he's hitting 4, he's going to have more he's going to have more RBI. He's going to have more opportunities to drive runners in. It kind of depends where they do put him there, but I expect very good things from Bo Bichette. I would say slightly under the average numbers that he put up between 2021 and 2023.
Yeah, and we'll get into all projected lineups and stuff like that later on in this offseason as well. But to me, I'll say this right now. I want Bo Bichette hitting 2, ideally not George Springer hitting 1, but that's what's looking like is going to happen. For me, Carter, this is, I agree with pretty much everything you said. You hit the nail on the head with this. Ideally, for this franchise to be successful the next bunch of years, you have to sign Vlad and Bo back. So that's your answer. That's what I want to happen. What do I expect to happen? Sadly enough, I don't expect Bo to re-sign here. I hate to say that. I just think this organization doesn't know what to do surrounding Bo Bichette. And I just don't know if it'll happen. I think they'll be in on him, but I think he's going to get a higher contract offer elsewhere from another team that needs a very solid shortstop, and they're going to leave the Blue Jays high and dry. But I think if he has an unbelievable season, the Blue Jays might be like, well, we got Santander. We have to re-sign Vlad. And now we got to go lock up Bo Bichette. So I don't know. I'm sort of in the middle there, but at the end of the day, I think it's not going to happen. As much as I do want it to, I have this gut feeling that says it's not going to happen. I guess, Carter, to wrap things up, final thoughts on Bo Bichette. Anything else you sort of want to touch on before we kick out of here. I do have a quick announcement to do just at the end.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go into if does this change if Ross Atkins is the GM at the end of 2025? Do you think it's more likely that Bo Bichette does sign if there is a new GM, or do you think that they give a better opportunity with Ross Atkins as the GM? For me, where I'm at, I kind of alluded to this the entire podcast. If Ross Atkins gets fired now at the end of 2025, that means the Toronto Blue Jays were not a very good baseball team in 2025. And I think that means Bo Bichette is as good as gone, as Bob Nightingale did report. It's going to all depend on how much Ross Atkins really wants Bo Bichette, how much he really wants Vladimir Guerrero Jr. When you look at the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. market, again, I don't think it's going to get done this offseason as much as I do want it to. I think their main focus is going to be Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Can that take away from a lot of the Bo Bichette stock? I think it absolutely can. Unfortunately, if you are going to go with this one or the other narrative, I think it does have to be Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Just even from a business perspective, I think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to bring in a lot more fans, a lot more viewership than a guy like Bo Bichette would, just because of the long ball, just because obviously of the MVP aspirations. Don't necessarily think Bo Bichette is as high on the MVP title and just the MVP aspirations as a guy like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is. So overall, I'm just going to end it with this. Do I think Bo Bichette is going to re-sign at the end of 2025? I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to say that he is going to be re-signed. I think that Ross Atkins is going to realize that it's not a very good idea a lot of the times to rebuild. If you're a baseball team, looking at Los Angeles Dodgers, looking at the New York Yankees, these teams never rebuild. You sign your superstars. You keep paying like the top markets. The Toronto Blue Jays are consistently a top 10 market in baseball. I hope that they can continue to do that. I hope that we never really have to undergo this massive rebuild like we had to kind of do in that 2018, 2019, 2020 seasons. I just hope that you can lock up Bo Bichette, you lock up Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and they can be your cornerstones to your franchise. And then you add through free agency. Obviously, there's still drafts that you can hit on. Ross Atkins hasn't necessarily been the greatest at doing that. But I think if you have these two cornerstones, it secures your brand of baseball for generations. Or not generations, that's the wrong way to say it, but 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, again, I said this earlier in the podcast, that you have Anthony Santander, you'll have hopefully Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette, and those are three amazing guys to build your next team around. You have three guys that can possibly hit, or Bo Bichette will hit 20 home runs, ideally, if he's in. Santander, you can probably pencil him in for high 20s, 30s home runs. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I mean, the sky's the limit for him. So a little bit of time left before spring training, before we see what this team will look like. Some lineup ideas, everything like that. A lot more to come from us here on the podcast as well. We are going back to 5 days a week starting, I believe it is next Monday. So tune in every single day for your podcast here. All the Blue Jays news and information will be right here. Anything that drops will be live. If it's crazy news, still waiting to hear what's going to happen with Alex Bregman, Pete Alonso. Stay tuned here, because I said it's probably coming down the pipeline for Pete Alonso. Who knows? I did say before that I thought it was going to run into spring training, maybe even into the beginning of the season. So he's a guy that I'm still a little bit skeptical on if something's going to happen soon. Alex Bregman, I think, will want to get the deal done before the start of spring training. But we'll have to wait and see. That's only my guess, because I've seen how these contracts go before, and I know who the agent is as well and how he likes to deal. So, again, thanks everybody for listening, for watching. However you do it, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We'll be back with you on Wednesday for more Blue Jays updates. Take it easy.